As an advisory to some listeners, in this episode, we discuss topics around suicide and self-harm, which could be hugely upsetting to some people. Hi, Steve. How you doing, man? Good to see you again.
All very well. All good.
Welcome to the wonderful world of inertia creeps. Called that because I kind of love the concept of the less we do take action, the more things go to shit. So, I also love the Massive Attack song, so I stole it. But yeah, I guess look, all I want to do today really is have a conversation. I love the work you're doing, and I love the messages you do, and I'm a big fan of the idea that that we're all different. And I'm kind of, in my work, I'm very much a champion of neurodiverse thinking, but I'm also kind of trying to create an environment in the world where instead of us having labels that we identify as being different, we just acknowledge that everybody channels information in different ways, and people have different challenges in their lives, emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever the case may be. And it's really just about creating environments to give them more as many people as possible the opportunity to thrive. And I love the reason I bring up neurodiversity and is that when I look at the construction industry, I see the construction industry as being very similar to sport. From all my work in sport, because you've got very different skill sets. You've got people who are academically very, very accomplished, and you've got people who had really difficult experiences in school and found sport as their only avenue out of what was the perceived traditional pathway to a career. And for a lot of them, and you see it all the time with footballers and stuff, like a lot of them, when you ask them, what would you be if you weren't a footballer, they'd say, I'd probably be in prison, like that this is the only avenue they have. And the construction industry probably is quite similar. You've got some extraordinarily talented, like massively qualified, like engineers and people at very high levels running business. And then you've got guys working on the building site who probably haven't had the greatest experience in school and probably don't see a whole whack of option available to them. And I think, when you're delivering training or when you're having conversations around leadership, you've got to factor in the fact that everybody in the room is different. And everybody's different motivations. Some people want to be the CEO and some people just want to do the same job they've done and be left alone. And there's nothing wrong with either of them. But I guess where I'm coming to with you and where I'm really interested to start the conversation is, when you have such a diverse group of people working in an organization, and when you have a group of people who's, may or may not feel like, if they've had a very negative experience in, say, schooling, and then they're going into a career where, career opportunities aren't necessarily obvious, that can have a huge impact on your mental health and your self-esteem and your confidence. And obviously I'm not just talking about like the building sites and the labourers, but I suppose to start with, you have a really, really cool insight into mental health in the construction industry. You also have this great company you started, the construction sport, and maybe give me a little bit of a background of how one thing relates to the other and where you're at right now, and then we can have a chat about what the work you guys do and where you want to go to.
Yeah, so I think with ours, and we actually said it last week, and someone said, Steve, you're probably in a position now to be more confident than anyone else in the industry to, in a way, blow your own trumpet and say no one knows as much as this industry about this topic than you do. Because I've spent the last 10 years now trying to find a way to, 9 years, come up to 10, to try and help mental health in construction. And that's always been whilst also working on the ground. But then not only am I working on the ground now, we're talking to the powers that be at the very top of the industry as well. And ahead of a lot of the heads of different major contractors are talking to us. And the only reason they're talking to us is because I've been so loud and made sure that they know that I'm going to start talking about them and they know it's coming. So they quickly get saying, let's get them on our side. But I've worked for more so in the infrastructure side of the industry. I've worked for probably most of the top 10, or probably if not all the top 10 in there: Murphy's, Kiers, Balfours, Volkers, Costain, Graham's, Osborne's till they went, Buckingham's till they went, Galliford Try, Taylor Wimpey, I've been on a couple of those. There's not many I haven't been on in the freelance world and jumped around with. And I got pulled into a few meetings that I probably wasn't actually qualified to be in. So I've sat in a few high-level meetings. I've seen what it kind of looks like at the top there. And I've seen kind of how you do go from 400 members of staff one week to then be told we need to make this 200 next week. And that has just happened over a flick of a switch. So I've seen that side of it, but at the same time as seeing that whole side of it, I've been on the ground experiencing it all fully as well. So I've seen exactly what it's like to know that day by day I need to do as much as I can to make sure I'm not laid off this week. And then I know what it feels like to get laid off on a Friday without having guaranteed work the Monday after. I've had to get the black book out all the way through COVID, and there wasn't a day that I didn't miss in the end because fortunately I had a lot of good contacts in there who were willing to help me out. But the most frustrating thing with it is I used to have a lot of resentment to the senior management and in the industry because they didn't understand how hard it was for the people on the ground. But now, knowing a lot of these guys and the way that these businesses are run and the tight lines, the deadlines that they work under and the small margins they all work under, there's just absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be the number one kind of industry in the world for people killing themselves. It's just clear to see from where I'm standing exactly why. The payment terms of this whole industry are completely ruined. People just chase money. I've got my own groundworks company now. We're doing well. We've got our own little setup. We love it. And we put that under the construction sport banner because we want people to know that we have our charity arm and that's our side, but we're ultimately a charity that is run by construction workers. So when I stand on panels at big fancy shows and people say we know what it's like to be on the ground, I can quite easily tell them, no, you don't. A lot of the time because I'm actually soaking wet at the moment because I just had I've been around a job around not far from me with a grab lorry, literally for an hour, half hour. Literally just he turned up early. It was a bit of a bugger. It's supposed to be late this afternoon, but yesterday I spent the morning measuring up a couple of jobs in London, and then yesterday afternoon I was on a site doing a big talk about mental health and wellbeing for a major contractor over in central London. So we see it and believe it, but at the same time, the way we're set up now and the way I've spoken over the last few years is the fact that we get told stories from families who haven't got people here anymore, and they all talk about the exact reason why those people aren't there anymore, and they have evidence pretty much to show why they're not here anymore. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a hell of a lot of people were killing themselves because of the stress of this industry and the health and safety executive. This is why my problem is not with the leaders of these companies, but in a way they need to stand up and be counted. But the leadership of the industry is suffering or is non-existent to a certain extent. And nobody's challenging the powers that be with it. The health and safety executive has washed their hands of it. I spoke with the head of HSC last week at an event, the top man there. He passed it over to people taking their own life on site as a coroner's issue. I've spoken to the head of the inquest for Ruth Perry, the lady who took her own life, the school teacher, off the back of the Ofsted report. I spoke to the head of the two ladies that were chairing the inquest for that, and they've already said that the coroner washes their hands with it. The coroner will tell you how someone takes their life, but won't look any deeper. So there's a huge area there completely missed. People aren't looking in. We've got evidence to show that a man there by the name of Charlie Ponder, who worked on a building site run by Blore Homes in Essex, took his own life because he was being bullied. Blore Homes put him on leave 3 weeks before he killed himself and gave him a week's holiday. Charlie told his family that he was just having a week off holiday and that was it. He went back to work for 2 weeks and then took his own life on site in front of his management. Now, there's emails, there's evidence there. I was actually told about that by a group of people who were on the site, a group of contractors, and then I actually had out of the blue 2 weeks ago the brother of the man, Charlie, come forward to me, and I said to him that I don't know the story from the horse's mouth as such, but I know this from Chinese whispers, shall we say? So please tell me what you're happy to tell me, and I can literally weigh it up in my head of what I've heard. And he was bang on the truth of everything I heard. Everybody said it. He was bullied by a site manager, and that site manager was taken off the job and put somewhere else. Now, nobody's looking into that now. It doesn't even get put down as a RIDDOR. It's not investigated as a workplace issue. The coroner will say that guy took himself by, I'm not sure the actual way he done it. I think it was by hanging. But then at the same time, the HSC just say it's nothing to do with us. Now, to me, there's a huge huge issue there with the way the company has managed their own systems and how they've managed the treatment of their own staff. So if that's not negligence in the workplace, if that's not, there's so many things we're going through at the moment, pulling out every item, what's currently in the workplace, the work health and safety at work law kind of thing, 1976, what it is, pulling out there now every single thing that we think can relate to suicide in the workplace and why the HSE should be pushing that. I get it, they don't, and they're in a position where the resource isn't in place, but that's why they should then go to government and push harder to get the funding. There's a lot of people come to me and give us the story of you can't start investigating people taking their own lives because it's too intrusive on families, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying go around to these people's front doors and start hammering the parents or the loved ones. I'm saying go into the workplace and find out what he's been up to at work. You can sit a mile off. I go on sites every single day, really, all the time. And any workplace is the same, or any room in general, isn't it? We've all been in those family parties where you can cut the atmosphere with a knife, sort of thing. But you can tell from 10 minutes in a working environment whether it's a good place to work or not. And the people speak, and that's the thing. If you've got someone there who's taken their own life, you will find out within seconds if there was more to that work related than not. And at the same time, I think we have a few debates. You can't do that. You can't do this. And I just say to people, so what do we do then? What do we do? We just keep ignoring it. We keep ignoring it. If we had 500 policemen kill themselves every year, the police force would be shut down. The fire brigade, any of these main kind of emergency services, or any other industry, it would be fully accepted. It would be fully.
And what do you think are the what do you think are the unique stressors in construction that have the numbers so high?
There's a whole concoction, a cocktail of these problems, and everyone blames the fact that, well, not everyone, but there's always blame put on the worker for having drug problems, gambling problems, for alcohol problems, but they're all symptoms of pretty much of what they're suffering with, and that's something else. And there's always the society. I get it as well. In general, is a tough place, especially in the UK at the moment. The way that our bills are just going up and up and up. But we come across a lot now. Again, I'm not saying for everyone, but trauma in construction is not acknowledged. No one's ever even spoke about post-traumatic stress disorder being a situation that the industry needs to look at. Now, I've worked on site for 15, 16 years, and I've worked with a lot of heavy plant. I've worked on Crossrail for 5 years. I've seen the aftermath of what suicide looks like when it happens in front of a train, and that's kept me up at night. Not once have I ever been said, are you psychologically okay, or can we send you for a check, or is there any support we can give you because you've had this thing. We were asked, I wasn't there, the day that one of it happened in front of a friend of mine on a platform. They said to him, do you want to have tomorrow off and take a few days leave to get your head down? We worked at Costains at this point, Crossrail. This is the most high-profile job in the country, if not Europe, at the time. And he said, no, I'm not having tomorrow off because if I don't come in, I won't get paid. And they went, okay, no worries, crack on then. And that was it. And they literally said, you got 2 or 3 days off unpaid to rest your head. You can't do it. Construction workers can't afford the weekend without being paid on the Friday. So there's no education, I suppose, as a kid when it comes to how to manage your money and how to manage life at the end of it. You're not told how to manage mortgages. You're not told what interest rates are. You finish school and then you set up as a self-employed worker and you're effectively a one-man business and you literally haven't got a Scooby what's going on. So you're on the back foot straight away. And there's so much of it. And obviously, people say, why don't we drug and alcohol check people? If you drug and alcohol check the scaffold industry, you'd have no scaffolders left. That's the whole truth of it. And when I speak, I know a lot of scaffolders, and I'm telling you now, they wouldn't get through it. And that's just the way the world is. But you do it and you see it. More the network rail side of things at this point as well. There was a friend of mine, he got caught. He had cocaine in his system and got banned for 5 years. What they didn't take into account was that he'd sold his whole life up to the railway world. And because construction, it very much is, because it was part of the construction side of it. He sold his life to the railway. He gave up his wife, his kids. They all left him and walked out on him. He was doing nights every day. He was doing weekends every day. And when his wife did walk out, he went on a bad bender and got himself in a bit of trouble, got caught out, lost all his tickets and was left with nothing. But no one took into account of he's got a drug problem. What could be the cause of this? Could it be the fact that he's done the last 10 years, 72-hour shifts for 10 years, working nights, and he's literally having to go party on his own all the time because social hours he's at work. And the guys that do it, transient working's another one. Everyone talks about working away from home. People, the thing, I think the world is, and what it was, transient working back in the day, I suppose, was just, so as I always say, the man's side of it was the man goes out to provide. He's not there to be hugging and mollycoddling the kids. He's out there just kind of fending for the family, sending it back. Whereas I think in today's society, it's a lot tougher for people to realise that. And I talk from someone who lives near London and has always worked near London, so I'm not fully clued up to it, what it's like on a long term. I've got up north and worked around for a few weeks at a time, but nothing compared to having to do it week in, week out. But there's a whole different way of life when it comes to it, and something that people won't ever understand unless they do it, I suppose. And it's the reason they work those away from home is because they can go and earn good money. But the only way to sustain that good money is by keep on doing it. And money isn't everything when there's wives and kids involved, stuff like that. So when they're not getting the love at home that everyone deserves, people move on, unfortunately. So it's a whole new culture. But we talk with a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses say to us as well, we've had it on more than one occasion, definitely. But they'll say, look, we want to support the mental health of our workforce, and we feel that we are doing that by just getting them paid. We're chasing money so much. We can't afford to do anything to these people, go and do anything on a social or kind of supportive way apart from chase to get their money. And today more than ever, that's why I think we're seeing businesses just going pop, 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 pop all over the place. So yeah, it's a whole, but again, I always go back to, if you investigate suicide within the workplace, companies will realise that if they don't take it seriously, they can find themselves extremely liable. Exactly the same as when people started wearing boots on their feet, exactly when people started putting hard hats on their head. Companies realised if we haven't got these ways in place, and it's not a case of going out there and they're going to dig up a load of dirt and sue every company because of previous history or whatever. It's a case of companies realising, why we're actually going to get a little bit of support now when it comes to tender processes, and when we can actually do this, when we need to have a bit of downtime, rightly so, we can pull that card and say our team needed a bit of downtime, and that's exactly what they need, or they need a little bit of a social going on in the day. I'm not saying everyone has to have a day off every time, but more needs to be done in the workplace to make it a good environment. And if you investigate that and your companies realise that, and then the legislation is changed and things are put in place to then show companies, you need to do more, you need to do this. Companies everyone comes to us, and to even major contractors, and we're only a very small, very limited funded charity. We get the top companies in the country coming to us, ask us, what do we do? Like, nobody knows what to do. This is coming from tier one contractors, some of the biggest projects in the country, all of them saying, we don't know what to do. Everyone's clutching at anything they can. And let's just do that. Let's just do this, and hoping for the best, because the leadership isn't running it. It's completely out of hands. And get me started on the mental health first aid courses and things like that. It's just kind of this is savage. There's no. I've messed up a lot in my life. I've pissed a lot of people off, and I've upset a few people over time. But every single time it's happened, I've always put my hands up and said, I've done wrong. I apologise. Like, no one in the leadership side of the industry from any organisation is saying that we've messed up, we must do more. It's, if anything, more and more reports come out about defending it and saying, oh, we are now doing well because we're starting the conversation. We've done this. We've had this big fancy do this year and given awards to people in senior places. That makes it all better. It's like, it's really not. Yeah.
It is fascinating, isn't it? Like, I mean, if you think about, in the 80s, they had the coined the phrase, the war on drugs. And the war on drugs ended up being a complete persecution of drug addicts, as opposed to actually making any inroad on the societal issues of why drug addicts existed. In the current climate, you see, sport is trying to clamp down on gambling, and the net impact of that is that a couple of footballers, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to cry about footballers making huge amounts of money again, but like two footballers ended up losing a year of their career because they were gambling on the outcome of games, where a gambling addiction is a different conversation. And there's a whole conversation about, well, gambling in society and how did these guys get access to this kind of stuff, and is there support for them instead of vilifying them? And it's the same thing I sense here. So tell me a little bit about construction sport and how you guys are trying to change the narrative, because I totally get where you're coming from, and I suppose from a leadership point of view in most organizations, very few leaders will ever admit they're wrong if there's a potential that they could be sued. You know, it's a litigation society. So it's like, oh, if we say we did wrong, all of a sudden the family of some misfortune who took his own life are going to come in and go, oh, he lost his life because of you. And we'll take a civil action against you. And I can see that side of it. However, you're 100% right. You're never going to get change if people aren't willing to acknowledge that mistakes were made and do it better. And instead of a box ticking exercise like the mental health support stuff, and I mean, I had it in particularly in gymnastics when I worked at home, where we were doing safeguarding training, and the first line of safeguarding training that the NSPCC delivered was basically telling you that 1 in 4 adults is a potential paedophile. So every coach in the room is automatically going, oh, wait a second, I'm being accused of something here. So suddenly the logic and the benefit of safeguarding training is lost, because straight away everybody's got their back up and now they're checked out of the room. And I introduced a whole different approach to that, where I was trying to get people to understand that, you know what, if you just follow these simple rules, you actually become better at what you do, which automatically makes the environment safer. So it's actually more about you protecting yourself and the kids getting protected as a net effect, you know. But I feel a little bit like construction is kind of at that, it's that far behind, in that it's kind of saying to you, well, you need to eat better and you need to hydrate and get better sleep, and it's not addressing the fact that there's a reason why a culture of drinking and drugs and whatever else might be prevalent, or gambling is a huge thing, right? And in Ireland, horses are part of part of the air we breathe. So people, like, backing horses is just part of what you do, you know, and it's a norm. And the betting companies, there's a reason why there's a couple of Irish betting companies are some of the biggest in the world now. They're cleaning up, you know, they're making horrendous amounts of money. And I feel like they're making horrendous amounts of money, taking advantage of people who are easily lured into this kind of thing. But if you're living week to week on your check, and then you get a chance to go in and double your check on a sure thing, a tip you have or whatever, you're going to do it, right? Because that makes your weekend better. And I've seen gambling and the impact it had. I saw a guy that I used to work with get a loan we had a credit union within our organization. He got a loan, his family were going on holidays. And there was a poker school in work, and we were working nights. And he brought the money for the holiday into the poker school and lost it all, and had to get up had to go home that night, or 6 a.m. or whatever, and try and figure out how he was going to take his family on holiday, having just lost all their money. You know, but the issue there is it that he was incredibly selfish for doing that, or is there a deeper issue, and is there a reason why that's going on? And even the culture, the fact that there was a poker school going on at night and not in work, that was normal. And the fact that you've got your mates in work playing cards and taking money off a guy who's trying to bring his family on holidays, like, you know, there's so many nuances to it. So anyway, all of that in mind, tell me a little bit about construction sport and how you guys are trying to kind of navigate all of this complication and give leaders, I suppose the best thing you can do is give leaders an out to find a solution where they don't have to put themselves open to litigation.
And that's literally it. And my biggest fear is, I said this publicly as well recently, just everyone's overcomplicating this so much. Like, how do we support the mental health of the workforce? It's like, just get out and have a kickabout. It's like, just go out and enjoy yourselves. And that's kind of what we're trying to use with the sports side of it, is similar to the military do it. And they always say the blue light services, they all get involved with sport because it gives so much to the people who are part of that kind of organisation. And you get out, and we noticed it. I was talking this morning, we said, there was a scaffolder that we used to work with who'd only been working with for a few weeks. He was pretty much just a labourer. I don't think he had any tickets, but he was walking alongside the director of Kia on this project. And we went for this big walk one day, and they both come with us, and they got chatting like two mates. And it turned out they both had a real good big passion for sports cars and literally and fancy cars and engines, basically. Now, them two blokes were just like two random mates walking along. Whereas on a building site, they would not be seen in the same room together, let alone the same site together. It was just, there were two ends of the spectrum, a labourer and a project director. But then you took them out of that and put them into an environment where you're a bit of a sport and exercise, in this case, just walking. And it was just like the answers were there straight away. People realise, oh, you might be whatever job role you are, but you are just another human being. And I don't see anyone for a job role anymore. Someone said he can't speak to him because he's that role. I'm like, there's another Hugh. He's got 2 legs, 2 arms, and he breathes the same way I do. Like he's got no difference, or there's no reason why that person shouldn't should have any resentment towards me. So take it as it comes. But my theory is, if we engage, or if we've got companies all behind this ethos of let's develop a football team with multiple teams feeding into a first team within Balfour BT, and then every company had something like that, or and then all different sports. The military are waiting to take us on at so much stuff. They have Wednesday afternoons off to go and play sport, and they're up for it. So I'm like, there's teams out there. We can play teams against each other. So we're talking to a number of them at the moment, actually, and hopefully come the next few months, we should start really pulling them together in how we can do it. But not only do you just you create these atmospheres, these created communities, really. We noticed that just about WhatsApp groups. We've got a football WhatsApp group with 60 on, rugby with 75 on them, and I think there's a walking one with 50 on as well. And you create a community of people who like the same things. And then that doesn't have to be sports and exercise based, but when you do that, when people find a community, it's a human instinct. People feel comfortable, people open up, and people know they're on the same page as other people, and they're not on their own. And that's the main thing. And it's simple, basic stuff. Like I was taught as a 5-year-old playing football, and why it's important to be part of a team. And I'm now in this construction world that's full of these heavy professional people. And it's like, why aren't we just doing things what are humane with each other? You know what I mean? I struggle going back on site now when people come out and talk to us in certain ways. I'm just like, no, it's not happening. Sorry. So it's just, we want to really just promote the benefits of what a culture of sport can do. And then we want to bring a load of big companies together to show that. So we've realised it as well. Like it's like high vises and hard hats, really, and even gas or the dust masks. When I first started doing landscape gardening, doing patios and that, none of us really wore gloves or barely boots, and then especially not dust masks when we're cutting. But all the main contractors did. So you saw that in the big sites, but that was what they done. We done something different. But now if you go around and even seeing Joe Bloggs working on his driveway, or doing a driveway, they're starting to implement a bit of PPE about them now. And you're starting to realise people are getting it. There is a reason for it. Not because their client's just a guy who literally owns the house. He's not a major client of a big civils firm or something. So people are starting to get it. And that's why I'm starting to think with the mental health stuff, it's got to start from the very top, and then over a long period of time, and it will be a long period of time, people can start addressing it themselves, and people realising it filters down from these big boys leading by example, really. And that is kind of what we want to push and promote. And we speak to, there's not many organisations we haven't spoke to now, and spoke to the leading people at those organisations. And I had it twice last week at UK Construction Week when I went to watch a panel, and the panel was warned, be careful what you say, Steve Kerslake's here. And that was just as a tongue-in-cheek comment. I thought, brilliant, I've got you right where I want you, where none of you feel safe because I'm going to call you out. So, but that's, people need to realise that they've got these companies talking about, what are we going to do now? We're going to go and get a load of data for the next 6 months. I said, well, you come back with your data in 6 months. I'll give you a list of people who've killed themselves in 6 months. Now tell me, why do you need more data? What do you need to know? The reason you need more data is because you own a data company. That's exactly what it is. Stop being greedy and just let us get on with this in a moral way. And off those comments, and I call people out, and I do it publicly online because it is personal to me. There's a lot of families that come to us, and I say that if this person said this and that organisation ain't doing what they should be doing, or money that's being raised or being spent in the way it is at the moment is diabolical and probably criminal if people really looked into it. But my theory on it is something's got to give, and what we're doing at the moment, nothing's changing, and accountability needs to be realised that whatever campaigns, whatever's gone in the last 10 years, it all needs to go straight in the bin it deserves to be in, because figures are just going up. We're not even being given the statistics by the ONS anymore, because I think they realise it's causing too much controversy. Like 2021 was this 507 magic number, and we haven't seen a one since then. The last thing that came out from ONS and Health and Safety was that construction is actually one of the best places to work. Well, I couldn't quite understand how that came about, but Yeah, it's an interesting world, but we're just using the sports side to bring everyone together as much as we can. And in the meantime, that's creating a good bit of football. It's giving us a cause to fight for. I'm not. We've always said we'll never become bucket shakers who turn up every week just to raise money, and we can't do that if we. It's all good doing that, but you've got to be seen to be fighting to change something. If you're not actually fighting to change it, to me, you're just taking the money and just letting you think, oh, but we're best not stop the tap leaking because this is what's paying us. So let's not fix the problem too much. And I see it day in day out now, and you just think. And I've had it with powers that be. Some scary comments back about, I think you should stop trying to push this, Steve, because this will affect this and affect this. I'm like, this is so wrong. People putting their business names before the actual fact that poor old lady around the corner is now bringing up her 2 kids in a row. You know what I mean? So there's a real fight against, like you say, that kind of battle of business and morals in a way. And I think that's what people. But if people just embrace it and just let it be what it is and enjoy each other's company and just. But I think again, there's so much money at stake that money brings out the worst in people, doesn't it? Unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the knock-on effect of living in a capitalist society. You know, we can get all kind of socialist and whatever about it, but the reality is that decisions are made based on the bottom line and not on the human beings in the organization. And you're really dependent in all industries. You're really dependent on individuals in excuse me, in positions of power making good decisions for their people in an independent, in an individual case by case basis. So if somebody in a position of power cares and wants to do the right thing by their people, you get this company that has this great culture. But in the main, it's fascinating to me. I mean, I do an awful lot of leadership training, and I'm very much about trying to get people to stop thinking about groups and labels and like these are the traits of a great leader, which is utter nonsense because it's telling you that a great leader is one type of person, when actually to me, a great leader is somebody who's honest and actually you have trust with, and who says what they do and you can follow them. That's, and whatever their message is, at least you know exactly where you stand with them, and there's no worry that they're talking about you behind your back or whatever the case may be. Very simple stuff, but in the main, and one thing I'm interested about actually is with the sports side of things. I mean, the one thing I hear over and over and over again is, especially from kind of leadership kind of people, is we've no time. There's no time. We're time poor. There's not enough hours in the day. Yada yada yada. Are companies embracing the idea of time being allocated to people to go and play sport with the absolutely perfect logic and good intention of what you're trying to achieve? But is there a pushback of, we haven't got the time to allocate to this. We've got deadlines to hit and blah blah blah.
Yeah, it is, and it's a tough one because I think it's like that long-term versus short-term thing. You need to realise by giving the guys just a couple of hours off this afternoon to maybe embrace a bit of five-a-side football will be the difference between those staff members leaving in 3 or 4 weeks or not. Like the turnover in staff and construction, people jump from job to job. When people start realising if they look after their staff, they won't have half the recruitment problems that they probably currently have, with people just jumping all over the place all the time. And I think that is, again, especially this world that we're living in at the moment, people want to be looked after, and I'd actually put that on the list of up there. I know everyone looks at the money straight away, but I think people are really starting now, especially with kind of their own health being a thing, is we need to understand that I can take that money, but I'm going to have to take a lot more stress. There's a lot of people who just want an easier life, and it'll be like take a little bit less, but enjoy it and embrace it. And I think, again, I spoke about before about especially the kind of white collar side of the industry, but when people can't, it's a fight to get the right staff. It's hard to find the right people to do the right jobs. So when people do get them, they've got to do everything they can to retain them. Now, if you're telling me you'll bring a culture in what's going to actually make these people enjoy themselves and get out there and socialise with each other and really get to know each other, that's only going to strengthen their employment kind of side of the company. So, it'd be one of them. It's one of them because we look at how much it apparently costs, the billions it's costing the industry every year, what the statistics say. But that's not enough for people to realise we've got to change, is it? Because they've been saying 1.4 billion or whatever it costs the construction industry a year, mental health costs it, and everything. But that isn't shaking it up enough because it's definitely not changing. But I think, but again, we do it with our staff. We're literally preaching, trying to practice as we preach, and it is tough as much as we can with our guys. I'll get the mental health card or charity card be pulled out of me by the lads, and I have to tell them, no chance, and crack on. But you've got to be cruel to be kind in a way. But we do everything we can, and I'm conscious after a few months that we haven't done anything with the lads lately. Come on, let's go and do something. But we split companies now, and I was even on a job last week, major contract job in London, and they were saying that we've never met anyone in the main office. Like, people don't even see face to face, like the actual powers that be that control them and pay them week in, week out. There's no relationships there at all. But my fear is if you get people socialising, enjoying each other's company, people will know who's on the end of the line when they ring you. People won't ring up and just jack the job in because they don't know you and they don't really care. People are human at the end of the day. And it does work both ways. I get that as well in terms of you are going to get guys who are always just going to jack the job in out the blue. But it goes back to another thing I looked at as well in terms of how the companies work in umbrella companies, PAYE systems and things like that. They don't get much notice before they're laid off. And they'll be laid off on a Thursday or Friday. However, technically, if they've been there for more than 12 weeks, they're employed. They should be deemed as an employee in employment status. But they get given no notice. But then I got that backlash to that was people saying, yeah, but these guys will still jump ship if they need to go elsewhere. And my argument with that was like, well, if you put in a 2 week notice period, these guys get paid. You have to give them 2 weeks notice before you finish up on a job. They can then find another job and they won't literally be scratching over a weekend trying to find a Monday start. But people always say, yeah, but what about when these guys jack in? Well, so make sure they know, we're all adults here. People know that if they jack and leave without giving permission, they will be liable for their last week's wages. And then guess what? People will do, so they won't jump in unless they can guarantee it's really worth it. If people realise that I've got a notice period after work, I have to let people know. So there's definitely something there what needs to be done because we get a lot of that time. Major contractors, literally people dealing with big infrastructure projects, some of the biggest in the country again, will lay people off on a Friday afternoon and then people will be left to fend for themselves. And most of the time, some good ones will find a start, but it's hard to find a start when people are closing the offices on a Friday afternoon, ready for Monday. So you normally go a few days into the next week and then you're away. But yeah, there's a whole cocktail of issues, shall we say, to say the least.
For sure. And what do you say to people who talk about initiatives to help? And I suppose traditionally in construction, it's men who probably are the ones taking their own lives and suffering with mental health struggles and that. And the idea about empowering people to or advocating for their own mental health. Is there stuff you do with your guys, or do you kind of feel like you got to get the organization right first before you put the onus back on the individual to take responsibility for themselves?
Yeah, definitely you have to lead by example, but at the same time, even the charity side of it is the hard bit. So many people want to help but don't know how to help themselves, and that is the most frustrating thing in the world. And if you look at mental health for a start, a lot of mental health issues are probably done if we just drank the right amount of water that we should drink every day. But nobody knows how much water we should drink every day. You know what I mean? It's like we're all greasing the mechanics inside our own head with poor diets and poor drinks. So you look at all that, go back to nutrition side. It's like, and I'm a sucker for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm far too much fast food and fry ups and too much beers at the weekend. But it's kind of, we don't help ourselves. And like, people have got to realise that we get people come to me, and I've had a row with a few guys and just been like, you pull your finger out. Like, don't come to me for sympathy because you feel down in the dumps. Just take a step back. And as I always said before, it's hard to read the label from inside the jar, was a good saying I always heard. It's hard to know what's going on until you take a step back and have a look. And you see that with so much with people now, like, you're not prepared to help yourself, so why should I give my time up to help you? And you have to be true. And I'm a believer I'm only here because my dad told me to man up. And now in today's modern world, we're not allowed to say that. But I'm all for it. I was told to man up. When you're told to man up, you dig deep within yourself to find a way to get through, and that's the meaning of what I believe that is. That's not about belittling you or making you feel any less of a man or whatever you are. But the thing with me is, men especially need to be told, I can buck your ideas out and crack on. You need to. There's only one person in control of this short journey we're all on, and that's yourself. You need to pull your finger out and realise it. And then I'm firm, and that's that now. It's like stand up and believe in it really, and be counted, literally, and go to the powers that be and just say this isn't right. But it's a two-way street with it all. But people need to understand that there's so much out there, content-wise, online, and all this kind of stuff, self-development stuff, and just modern day ways of helping yourself, from literally having, like I say, cold showers in the morning, or this kind of stuff, or these different ways of just keeping yourself hydrated or eating the right stuff. And there's a million and one other different diets out there nowadays. You can't keep up. We don't know what's right and wrong, but we all know that 5 beers every evening and a fry up every day isn't going to do well. But come Sunday morning, Monday morning, when you're feeling the beer fear kicks in and you feel at an all-time low and you really feel like you're at the end, we'll take a step back and then just look at what you've eaten and drunk the last week, and then wonder why things feel like they're feeling a lot worse. And like I say, I'm a sucker for it myself. I actually had it the first time this year after a stag do. I was nervous about the back end of the stag do, where it hurts a bit more after when you get a bit older. I was thinking, I know what Monday and Tuesday's bringing. I was like, I just gonna have to embrace the low. So I think even on the Saturday night, I was actually seen to be having a few glasses of water. Was very out of character, put it that way. But I just thought, I can't handle it.
Yeah, no, man, brilliant. And very much kind of in line with everything that I do think there's an element of taking responsibility for yourself and understanding, actually, just education. I mean, this is the stuff like that. I have a huge problem with the way we educate kids in school. I think it's all going back to the Industrial Revolution of training people to take orders and work in factories or go to war. That's kind of that's why schooling was created and the way it is created. And the messaging in school is all around, like everything in secondary school is all about passing exams and nothing about preparing you for life. And I think instead of us spending time talking about, it's okay to be depressed and the wellness stuff that they have in school now, instead of us saying it's okay to be depressed, it's actually not okay to be depressed, and here's what you can do about it. Here's when you're having a difficult time. And life, let's face it, life is about surviving the shit that gets thrown at you. Everyone, I've been working on a book and I've been researching all this stuff where people are sharing me stories about how they life is derailed, and then their success, whatever that success may be, came off the back of this massive disappointment. And it's fascinating to understand how people have the capacity to overcome, tragedy or trauma or whatever the case may be, and thrive afterwards. And have that, resilience is a word that gets bandied around a lot, but it's that kind of understanding of yourself enough to know that I can take this and I can actually come back, and even at the lowest point. And I've been there. And actually, I love the concept of sport. I had a particularly low point in my life about 10 years ago. And my best mate turned up in the car park at the place I was staying at the time. And he rang me and he said, come on, we're going for a beer. And I was like, oh no, man, I was, in a difficult situation for a lot of reasons. And I was like, I can't do it, man. And he's like, no, come on, I'm in the car park downstairs, get in the car. So we went down and there was a game on TV and we sat down and we had 3 or 4 beers, which isn't necessarily what would be recommended as a way to treat a mental health struggle. But in this instance, sitting there watching a football game, having a couple of beers with a mate and just talking about football. Actually, I went home that evening and that I passionately believe that one conversation is the reason I'm here today. Because I got a chance to go out and have a laugh with a mate, enjoy a game, and forget, and realize that, yeah, I'm in a really shitty place right now, but I have options, and I've got people who give a shit. And from there, I kind of took the decision, right, well, what am I going to do about this? Because I don't want to stay in this place I'm in. So how am I going to get out of it? And then you start to build and whatever. And I think that's what's missing, is that conversation around, yeah, you're in a really difficult place, but there is an option, there is a path, there is something, and there are people who care. And one of the things I've worked with and around people who have taken their own life, and I always wish the one conversation I could have had with them was to help them understand the devastation they leave behind. You know, like the one thing, if you lose somebody or if you lose suddenly to a heart attack or suddenly in a car crash, it's a shock, it's really difficult, and there's a grieving process, but there's nothing you could do about it. But when you lose someone to suicide, you're forever going to be asking the questions, what could I have done? How could I have saved them? What should I have done? Is it something I said? Could I have been there? Did I not ring them that day when I said I would? You know, all these, and that's with them, that's with your loved ones forever. And it's a message I'd love to get to people when they're in that lowest ebb, to understand that it's terrifying, it's difficult, and you know, it may look bleak and there's no option, but there is a path out of it if you're willing to just dig in and be in that horrible space for a little bit longer and realize that the people who love you are there and will be there when you come out of this black dog or whatever you want to call it, you know. Steve, absolute pleasure, man. Love these conversations. I'm going to have a conversation with you off air now in a second about the idea of taking this construction sport thing to different countries, because I love it. Thanks so much for your time, man.
Thanks for the opportunity.